You over there all night. So weird how this does this.
Right, I need that. This. Nancy, do you want to do the public comment?
Sure.
Do you have it?
I do. It was just that one, right?
Just the one, yep. Oh, yay.
Do you know how to say the name by any chance? I don't want to mess that up. It's like Shaitan.
I don't
Daisy?
know. Hi, Meg.
Hi.
How's our little one?
He is vomiting.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
Are you able to be on the meeting, or do you not want to?
I'm gonna be here for as long as I can. If we have to abruptly leave, I have to abruptly.
Good evening, Hopkinton. Welcome to the October 15th, 2020 Hopkinton School Committee meeting. We are here in the Hopkinton High School Library, and we are being broadcast on HCAM via their many channels, TV, YouTube, Facebook Live. I think that's it. So at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and invite everyone who is willing and able to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just want to make a note that our colleague Meg Tyler is not able to join us tonight, so she is participating via Zoom, and I will unmute her when we need to take a vote, if that's okay with everybody. We roll with it in these times. So, okay, first item on the agenda is recognitions. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have any recognitions?
I do not have any recognitions.
Anybody have any recognitions? Okay. Next order of business is public comment. I think we received one public comment tonight, and I've asked Nancy to read it for us.
So it is, Hi Hopkinton School Committee. In the section about retaliation at the bottom of page 3, we have the following section. Retaliation against a complainant because they have filed a harassment or sexual harassment complaint or assisted or participated in a harassment or sexual harassment investigation or proceeding is also prohibited. It would be practical and helpful to state what constitutes a complaint, how a complainant can file a complaint, and what the complainant has to do to avail of this policy's protections. I know we state this for sexual harassment, but not for harassment. Thanks and regards, Shaitan Ahuja.
Okay, did anyone else receive any other public comments? Okay. That brings us to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so this is the superintendent's report for October 15th, 2020. I did want to just update folks on where we are in terms of COVID-19 cases and talk a little bit about how those are impacting the public schools. Just yesterday, the state of Massachusetts map was updated, and so you can see how many communities have gone to red. Thankfully, Hopkinton is still a green community. Our total case count as of yesterday, the 14th, was 153 positive cases. The 2-week case count has been 9 people. The average daily incidence rate per 100,000 is at 3.94. And as you can see, our case count has gone up. And in talking to Sean McAuliffe, our Director of Public Health, he'll frequently say, we're kind of dancing on that line between green and yellow, and so he's always very carefully watching things. I like to remind families about that box at the bottom, the logo for the Hopkinton Department of Public Health, the It All Starts Here. That's one thing that Sean has been underscoring probably for us since June or July. And it really is just very important for families to practice safe COVID behaviors as family units. And what that really means is just being cautious when you leave your home and make sure that you're wearing a mask. And even though people are very familiar to you, you keep increasing your circle and increasing your bubble, so to speak, if you are around other folks and you're within 6 feet and you're taking your mask off and doing all of those kinds of things. And I know as human beings we like to sort of trust one another, but I think we do have to be very cautious, especially now that we start to see that the state that used to have maybe 2 or 3 communities in the red, there's quite a significant change that you see up there tonight. One of the things that I would also like to point out is that we have had 6 COVID positive cases in the Hopkinton Public Schools to date. And I can tell you that of those 6, they have all contracted the virus outside of the public schools. And even though there have been times when those folks have come into our public schools during their period of contagion, we have seen no internal transmission in our schools to date. So I think that we are doing the right things in school. We've got our kids wearing masks. They are socially distanced at 6 feet. Frequent hand washing, lots of use of hand sanitizer outside for mask breaks. And I think we're trying very hard to ensure that our doors stay open and kids are able to get that hybrid education that they had signed up for. So again, I'm just asking families to be cognizant of how things are playing out at home. This is just sort of a recap of the fact that we have had those 6 folks in our school, and again, no transmission of the virus inside our walls. This was an interesting slide. The last time we were together, those were the enrollment numbers that I had shared. And one of the things that happens around October 1st, and I think this year there might have been a little bit of an extension with DESE, is that we kind of clean up all of our enrollment. We really, start reaching out to families who said perhaps that they were going to enroll, or who have said that they might homeschool, or that they might leave to go to another district. And if those were the numbers last time we were together, you can see where we are now. So there's a significant drop. In August, our K-12 numbers were 3,864, and our all-student number was at 4,020. So Georgette and I took a look at last year's numbers and this year's numbers, and so last year, at this point in time, we had 97 students that had exited the Hopkinton Public Schools. This year, we have had 159 students exit the Hopkinton Public Schools. And that can be for things like attending private school, it could be homeschooling, any of those kinds of things. Last year, at this point in time, in October of 2019, we had 172 students that were a net gain. And this year, you can see that we only have 33 kids that were a net gain. And when we looked at where we thought we might be in the budget process for last year, we imagined that we could have as many as 236 new students, and that is clearly not the case. But one concern that we do have is that the students who have exited this year, the 159, could be returns, and we could have a significant number of new kids next year as well, when we start to look at housing growth and all of that. So it's just something to keep an eye on. It's not something to be alarmed about, but it will be interesting to see if any of the 159 do return to us. All right, people, I think, are curious about how many kids did transition learning plans. All told, we had 120 students that have made changes. At Marathon, there were 35 requests, 8 moved to hybrid, 12 moved to remote, and 15 students came on board as coming to school every single day on site. So there are 15 students now that are 5-day-a-week kids. At Elmwood, we had 12 requests, we had 5 moved to hybrid, and 7 moved to remote. At Hopkins, we had 12 requests, 2 went to hybrid, 9 went to remote, and 1 went to every day on site. At the middle school, we had 34 requests to transition, 11 went to hybrid, 21 went to remote, and 2 have decided to join us every day on site. And the kids who are coming to us every day on site, that they are kids who have been invited to do that for reasons by the district to ensure that they are, kind of keeping pace with education. And finally, at the high school, we had 27 requests. We had 5 students move to hybrid and 22 move to remote. In preparation for submissions to DESE, one of the things that Linda Henderson has put together for us is some of the percentages of kids in where they're falling. So the 5.9% that you see there, that's just a slice that comes right out of our spreadsheet, and that is the percentage of students who are attending school 5 days a week here in Hopkinton. 67.7 are the students who are attending the hybrid program, and 26.4 are the students who are fully remote, and that's K-12. And then I just thought I would showcase these photos. All come from the middle school, and I just really liked them because the other day I was in the middle school and thought, education doesn't really look so different from how we thought it might, except that there's a lot more space between the kids. So in that very first photo that you see in the top left, the kids are taking a math exam, and really it's, the kind of exam that lets us know if there has been, learning loss since March 10th. Really just to sort of see where our kids are, and it looks like a very typical classroom. Everyone working hard, except we're all wearing masks, and we're 6 feet apart. In the bottom left, you can see that the kids are outside for PE, and the lesson of the day is to, kind of take a look at their heart rate and what happens, physiologically as your heart rate goes up. And so there they are, they're making a run right down the center driveway there at the middle school, and all wearing masks and all socially distanced. And then finally, people have wondered, is it possible to do collaborative work? And you can see just a couple kids sitting outside in the hallway. They are definitely 6 feet apart, and they're wearing masks. They have their laptops open, and they can communicate in that nice wide open space if they need to in terms of collaboration. And then just a note of congratulations. We have a couple of students here at the high school. And the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Network have invited the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair to do some presentation at an upcoming event. And so two of our students, Arkita Nemolakanti and Srija Bola, have both been invited to present to a group of adults their Hopkinton High School Science Fair project. So that's really quite an honor for them to be able to do that. You know, they are part of like a morning panel of speakers. So congratulations to those students. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions?
I had a quick question back to the COVID slide at the beginning. The 9 positive cases in 2 weeks in Hopkinton, those are not all currently active, are they? Some of them have been, like, those are the 9 we've had over 2 weeks, but
I believe, yes, that there would be 9 different people who have been positive at different times over a 2-week period. Yes, so they're not all students. They can be a combination of any resident.
I believe it's a 2-week trailing average, right? So 14 days ago, they look at the 14 days prior, and the average of all those slices of 14 days is 9.
But what I'm thinking back to is yesterday, the Board of Health sent out something indicating there were 4 current active cases yesterday. So my guess is that we've
gone down.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's
right.
One question about the students, the student attrition,
Yes.
when we start working on the budget, are we going to make the assumption they're coming back so that we're working off of kind of the worst possible scenario in terms of children for next year, I guess?
Yes, so we are going to ask Arthur Wagman to take a look at that. He is the person who did that study for us last year, and to help us with that kind of prediction. And I know, Joe, that you had a growth study committee meeting last night, and, you know, if you can just let me know when those are, and I think Georgette's going to kind of watch out for them too. I would love to attend those because I think that information, and I also get all the information from the town indicating where there are homes, you know, permits being pulled to build homes and when homes are ready for occupancy. So I do think it would be a mistake for us to assume that 159 kids have left for good, because we've heard a lot of reasons why they're leaving, and they are typically COVID-related.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that the chair knows that you're supposed to be invited to those.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wasn't aware that you didn't have an invitation to it. You were missed, and we want you there, so thank you.
Do you know how many of those are homeschooling?
Oh, Jen, you may know. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes, I know.
On the spot?
I do. We have 31 students district-wide being homeschooled, and we have 18 who signed on for homeschooling this year. So I'd say 18 I would definitely count on coming back.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for that. Thank you. That brings us to the chair report. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have the link to the slides?
I do.
It's a brief one today. Next slide. Emails this week, in the last 2 weeks, we really only got 3 main emails from the community. It was kind of quiet. We got one with some suggested updates to the district website that was sent today. It went to Mr. Ghosh and to me and a few others, and Mr. Ghosh, I think, will respond to that or take that under advisement. It had to do with locating the dismissal forms, using the Find It Fast feature for some of the elementary schools, and also absentee forms. So we received that. We received one email relating to the continuity of learning during quarantine. It was from a community member whose child was asked to quarantine. The child is healthy, but was a close contact for someone who tested positive, so therefore was asked to quarantine and struggled to maintain learning during the quarantine time. Because of that, she reached out to see if it would be possible to do more Zoom video conferencing, and that was redirected to Mr. Bishop and Dr. Kavanaugh. And they were copied on an email regarding times that work is due in the middle school. There was some question about if a student had to turn their work in by 2 p.m., which was requested by some teachers, and that was answered by Mr. Keller and Dr. Kavanaugh.
And Meg is trying to get into the meeting.
Oops. Pardon me? Meg bounced out of the meeting, I think.
And that was redirected to Ms.
She's back. Okay, and I signed several warrants, CARES Act warrant, 2 general operating and other funds expenses, bus refunds, which keep coming in. Thank you, Ms. Rothernick, for processing those, and middle school student activities, and also the payroll warrant, which we will cover in the consent agenda. And liaison reports. Does anyone have a liaison report for this week? Joe?
The Growth Study Committee met last night, and again, apologies to the superintendent. She's supposed to be invited to all those meetings, so I'll make sure the chair knows that. We did have a shift in who's chair, so I think there was a slip there. So again, apologies. But this was kind of a kickoff meeting with the new chair, Finn Perry, so he had each of us kind of share our views on growth in the community and what it means, and I gave some from my perspective, as well as some of the school committee liaison, just kind of where we think the connection points are with the school system.
Great.
So we have a few other meetings scheduled in October and November, and I'm sure they'll be looking for an update on enrollment too.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I didn't have any myself, no? Okay. Office hours. I did send around a thought about office hours. I was looking to continue the Wednesday evenings. I thought briefly about farmers market in person, but I think with the case count, I don't know, I'm not sure that's the best option for us. I think maybe if we continue for a little bit with the Zoom hours, but I'm throwing it out to you all. I think I suggested next Wednesday night, maybe the 4th of November, and I forget, the 18th, I think, of November. So I don't know how you feel, if you could just get general agreement on a Wednesday night, and if anyone does want to make a plug for an in-person office hours, we can talk about it.
I don't have a strong feeling about in-person office hours. I do think the accessibility of Zoom improves our attendance in some ways, or perhaps it's the topics we had over the summer, but, and I agree with you, where case count is rising, we don't need to push more than we have to. Wednesdays I've been getting out of work later, so I would have to look more at my work schedule to know.
Okay. I know, Lou, you said you could do the 2 November dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to participate. I didn't sign up quickly enough last time there was an opportunity, so I'd be happy to take some of those nights too.
Okay, so are you okay if we proceed with a couple of those?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll continue to cement those offline, but let's target next Wednesday for the next one, if that's okay. I know I can do it. I don't know if you can do next Wednesday.
I'll have to check.
Or Meg, maybe, if you can't. But we'll try to make that happen. We'll communicate that out through listserv and also on Facebook. All right, that brings us to, oops, new business, the capital plan, Ms. Rothernick.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me 1 second. I have a comment from Meg, who says office hour dates look fine to her. She agrees that Zoom office hours are the way to go. Thank you, Meg.
So I'm going to invite Mr. Person and Mr. Ashoka. Stop passing notes in the back of class. Just so you're available, I don't know if you, just so you're available for the committee. So thank you. This is the first presentation of the capital plan for FY22. As we've discussed several times, the capital plan for FY21 was put on hold or deferred until the May town meeting. So a lot of what you're going to see is the same as what we presented in the spring, with maybe a couple little nuances. As we do each year too, we will be looking to update pricing and, is this really still applicable and everything going forward. So
So here's a summary of what is there. So the HVAC district-wide, the boiler replacement at the middle school, the roof replacement for the Hopkins School and middle school. These are partial roof replacements. A vehicle for building and grounds, system-wide security upgrades, system-wide technology upgrades, the district planning study, the White House exterior, and the wetlands order of conditions. Going through the first piece, the HVAC district-wide, so this is an article that you see, that we've been doing on an ongoing basis. So the focus for next year will be to continue the process of installing control systems at the middle school HVAC. These are for direct digital controls on up to 20 of the largest heating coils. And this came from the engineering study that we did for the replacement of the boilers at the middle school. So we felt this was a good step to go hand in hand with that. So again, the boiler replacement at the middle school, this represents the replacement of the 2 boilers at the middle school, but the design and engineering actually is making a recommendation to put in place 3 smaller units, and that's both for cost and energy efficiency. There was money that was requested, and so this is the additional money to complete that project. Roof replacements, again, these are partial replacements at both the Hopkins School and the middle school. And again, these have active leaks. At the Hopkins School, the areas in green are what will be replaced. The area in blue was done in 2016, and the area in purple will be repaired. At the middle school, again, the area in green is the area that would be replaced. The area in blue was done in 2008, and then the smaller section actually was done in 2019, and that was a result of storm damage, so that was an insurance repair. And the other 2 that are kind of in an off yellow-green strange color have solar panels, so that is not part of the scope either. There's a request for an additional vehicle for the maintenance staff. Currently, we have 3 trucks for 8 staff, and these vehicles are used for everything: maintenance, towing, plowing, sanding, everything throughout the district. So when you only have 3 trucks among 8 staff, your efficiency is not good. System-wide security upgrades, this is the last step, really, the last large step in installing cameras that came from a security audit that we began this installation several years ago. So this would be the final step. After that, it would be a maintenance program going forward. System-wide technology upgrades. This, similar to the HVAC article, is a different focus on an annual basis. So next year, the focus is the phone system server and the bell system. The phones actually is a town-wide initiative, so that will be done in conjunction with the town. It's one system that services both the town and the school. So we'll be working together with the town on that piece. Now, there is a possibility that the town has found a pocket of money to do the phone system now. So this is something that could be updated, but at the present time, that is still an active request. The district planning study is to, again, looking at our enrollment and growth. So we would be using our enrollment projections, the MSBA space guidelines, grade configurations, and discussion groups to determine a long-term strategy for enrollment growth in all of our physical plants. the White House exterior renovation, this would really continue the project of all the work that has been done with this building. The interior was renovated in 2019 with generous donations throughout the community and with the Hopkinton Public Schools funds. And this program, or this building, is being used for the 18 to 22 special education program and office spaces for both building and grounds and transportation. So you can see the condition of the exterior. And the wetlands order of conditions, this is open order of conditions that has been in existence since the fields were created with the construction of the high school. So this is a very long overdue order of conditions. It has since been connected to the turf field project. So in order to fully close out the turf field project, this needs to be completed. The full cost is $40,000, and $40,000 was appropriated, but the remaining appropriation needs to be done in order to finish this and close it out. And that is that.
Susan, if I could just add before the questions, I just did get an email from Josh on Town Fire today, saying they had approval to help cover the cost of the phone software.
Okay, so... Okay, because Mr. Ghosh doesn't have a microphone, I'll just say for the public that it does look as though the town is going to be able to move forward and do the phone system now, so that piece of the capital will be reduced.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Meg because I keep forgetting her. So, Meg, did you have any comments on the capital plan?
Because Mr. Roche doesn't have a microphone, I'll just say for the public that it does look as though the town is going to...
She's on sound delay. She's on delay. Sorry, bear with me.
In the meantime, can I ask a question?
She's ready.
Let me type it in.
Okay. Meg is typing. We'll come right back to you, Meg. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. Susan, the district planning study, can you talk about that in relation to any other planning that we already have allocated money for? Was there already some other work done with DRA or others in planning?
We have some kind of 40,000-foot level studies that have been done, so all of this information will all be gathered together and put together so that all the information is part of what we look at. So the study that DRA did, I guess a year ago now, really took the enrollment projections and MSBA guidelines in each building and pretty much outlined where our deficits were. So that's as far as that study went. And there was a presentation to the community of what that was.
Right.
So the next piece is really taking that and having further discussions. We'll be redoing the enrollment projections. And what does this mean? You know, where is the property that is available? Is there property available? What should grade configurations look like? Do we keep with? So all of those discussions will become part of kind of this next step.
Okay, good, thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Next question is about the roof replacements. She says the cost seems less than it was last year. Is that true, or?
That is true. So when this was presented initially a year ago, it was $4 million. we actually put it out to bid, and so this is based on an actual bid. And the vendor actually has agreed to hold that price. So we have the vendor locked and loaded, if you will, that will have that price for the next summer build.
Excellent.
So, can I ask a question? The capital plan, I know, is mostly the delayed plan from last year, right, for this coming year. But I was wondering, I mean, we don't know how long COVID will last, we don't know a lot of things. Are there any foreseeable funds that we can get based on COVID and stuff to do extra building fixes, like more HVAC work, etc.?
So we have used the CARES money, the COVID money, if you will, for things that would be relevant to being HVAC. So, for instance, replacing the boilers are not connected to COVID. So you can't use that money for that. So what we have been able to move forward with, because it does enable or enhance, if you will, what we need to do as far as COVID related, but these pieces really are not.
Nancy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And my only comment for the committee is that I had a few questions about technology, only in that we all know that all of a sudden technology is the engine that is keeping so much of the district going. And Mr. Ghosh and Ms. Rodemek and Dr. Kavanaugh were kind enough to answer some questions from me. And I asked if, when the budget presentation is done for technology, if Mr. Ghosh would give us sort of an executive level overview of sort of our infrastructure. Not, to get down in the weeds, but just a sense of where we are in terms of particularly what I asked for was our strategic areas of concern, like security, reliability, supporting our district strategic initiatives, et cetera. So I did ask for some updates, and I think they'll come with the budget presentation down the line. I was just trying to put in context these investments, which makes sense, and it was a good discussion, so. So this will come back for a vote. Is that correct? This is a discussion night, and it will come back to probably our next meeting, do you think?
At the next meeting, I would need a vote so that I can pass this along to the town for the next steps, CIC and everything else.
Okay. Yes.
Can I ask one final question?
Yep. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, I was just reading Meg's comment.
No, sorry. So once again, these are held over from last year to this coming year. Is there any way to know what upgrades you would have normally done this coming year that you feel are kind of high priority? That I know we're trying not to increase the budget, but I would like visibility into what upgrades you thought you were going to do the coming year and which ones you feel are really high priority, so at least we have visibility into the things we're having to put off that might be important.
The only thing that you're really looking at is kind of the HVAC and what you would be plucking off on an annual basis. So there isn't anything that is in imminent failure. All of our pieces of equipment, if you will, have all gone through preventive maintenance. They're all repaired if they were in need of repair. So everything at this point in time is working at its level that it should be. So there isn't anything that I would foresee that we're really putting off that is putting us in a bad situation.
Okay. Thank you.
And Meg did want to say, great. For 2021, $5 million capital plan, I don't really understand her comment. She says, great. For 2021, it read capital plan October 19, $5 million, so that is good. So I think she's referring back to the roof.
Yes.
So. Okay, so we will see you again with this capital plan next meeting. Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for coming out for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you both.
Thank you. Dr. Kavanaugh, the district improvement plan.
Okay. person must have the magic touch because it's coming like that. Here we go. All right, so I'll just give you a little bit of background on, sort of these strategic objectives. This plan started more than 2 years ago, really. We had engaged a consultant from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education who had come out, and we did a lot of work with the community around my listening tour and all of that. And what you'll see up here tonight, some of the broader pieces are what we put together way back then. And each year, what the building principals do is we all get together as an administrative team, so not just the building principals, but also the director of finance, the director of curriculum, the special education director, HR. We're all in a room together, and we take a look at all of the things that 2.5 years ago we said these are important things, and this is the direction in which we want to move this district. And we take a look at those and we say, how are those things manifest in our own buildings or in our own departments or in our everyday work? And so we have a sort of a great big spreadsheet, and we start to piecemeal those things in there. So each building does it, each department does it, and then what happens is Mrs. Parson and I sit together and say, which are those pieces that are parts of school improvement plans or parts of central office work that are so salient that we believe that they should go into the district improvement plan for the year. So that's really what you'll see here tonight. The vision for the Hopkinton Public Schools. The Hopkinton Public School District is a community of educational innovation that enables students to become critical thinkers, creative problem solvers, effective communicators, and productive, healthy citizens. And a couple of years ago when we started this work, we thought about the mission, and that mission that you see up there is one that has been in effect in Hopkinton for a very, very long time. And we debated, should we change it, but we really do feel like it kind of captures what Hopkinton is. So we have not altered that mission statement at all. The mission of the Hopkinton Public Schools is to learn, create, and achieve together. We love its simplicity, and we love that it really has that sort of 30,000-foot, this is what we're about. We did change our values, and we arranged them in an acrostic that employs the Hiller's letters, so honesty, innovation, leadership, lifelong learning, empathy, respect, and social, emotional, and physical wellness. So a few years ago when we got this thing going, we had these sort of overarching objectives, and they were to plan for our enrollment growth. We were sort of in the thick of noticing how so many students were arriving on our doorstep and how ill-prepared we were for that at the time. And to value individual pathways. There was an understanding that our kids are really individual learners, and despite the fact that when they come in our kindergarten classrooms and first grade classrooms, we kind of look at that group as a whole group of learners. By the time our kids are leaving Hopkinton High School, they have really been able to carve out some pretty unique pathways for themselves, which is, I think, a hallmark of what happens here in Hopkinton. And then building school communities of collaboration. And, those goals are to collaborate with families and with the community and with elected officials and, really start to open up that dialogue between school and community. So what we've done is we've taken those 3 buckets, and they are now those orange column, the white column, and the green column. And under the heading of metrics for success, you can see that there's black font up there. The black font, those were the priorities that we had determined would be important a couple of years ago. And each year what we do is we change the green font so that you can see what we happen to be working on in a particular school year. So I will go through and just read the black font areas, the big headings, and then if you have questions about some of the work that we're doing this year, we are happy to address those things. So we've always had build budgets that propel innovation, and one thing I will say about that one is that, we have kind of turned on a dime for that one, because now our goal is really to think about what money do we have in the community, given the fact that we're living in a pandemic, and what is it going to look like when we start to emerge from that pandemic? And some of that federal money may have dried up, and so here we are now looking at our resources and trying to educate close to 4,000 students. To prioritize high-quality curriculum instruction and assessments and the implementation of best practices. to launch initiatives that build leadership, innovation, and practical and agile programmatic expansion. I think we've been doing a really nice job of growing programs over the last couple of years. Plan for human resource, facility, and equipment needs. And just if we could talk a little bit about facility and equipment needs, one of the things when COVID kind of hit and we were very worried about things like, being able to social distance or HVAC, Mr. Person's crew, really, so to speak, maintenance and building and grounds and custodial workers have been able to make that happen, and I think the money we've invested in our equipment to date has really enabled us to open our doors pretty readily. Undervalue individual pathways and wellness, advance learning for all, and foster diverse pathways to success. Invest in social, emotional, behavioral, and physical wellness and graduate well-balanced students. Build individual habits of success, advance communication skills, exploration and risk-taking, independent thinking, and perseverance. And to inspire passionate learners with growth mindsets. And then finally, under build school communities of collaboration, and again, these are our metrics for success. Enhance community and classroom capacity for kindness, respect, compassion, and service to others. Ensure vertical alignment of district programs and services. Promote collaborative learning and problem solving and fostering the growth of relational competencies. And develop advanced communication skills and opportunities to better understand others. And maybe if I could just take a second, so you see a couple of them that don't actually have green bullets under there, but I think that those are the kinds of things that we are always doing. So we're not calling out just some new initiative, but we keep those things at the forefront of our work all the time. I believe no matter what building you walk into in our school district, you will see that our kids are practicing kindness and respect and compassion and service to others. So in the same three categories, we had two other areas of diversity initiatives and communication and stakeholder partnerships. So just under diversity initiatives, we are accounting for the evolving profile of our student population. If you talk to our teachers or our administrators or folks who are working in social emotional realms, they will tell you students are changing. To honor and advance diversity awareness, including how it applies to curriculum instruction and individual pathways for success. And finally, to create inclusive cultures that celebrate diversity and backgrounds and build relationships across race, class, gender, and learning abilities to create caring, learning communities. And finally, in the communication and stakeholder partnerships, to build impactful and engaging communications and partnerships with local businesses, community organizations, and elected officials, to amplify student voice and self-advocacy skills, and to grow partnerships between families and schools. And so, as I said, the green font, those are the things that we are working on specifically this year. Under, some of the diversity and the collaboration work, we're really excited to have Jennifer Sucre, who is our new equity administrator in the district. That's great.
Thank you very much. So much of this echoes, of course, by design, what we heard from the school improvement plan, so it sounds great and very familiar. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Kavanaugh about the plan for this year?
I have questions, but I just want to say I prefer this layout from what we used to do years ago, with just the way it's packed neatly and ties together with the work that we've been doing over the course of the years.
Thank you. Yes, I think we were shooting for something that was really user-friendly, so if you had questions, you could see it pretty immediately.
The question I had was on the previous slide. I noticed looking back, and I know you did comment on this briefly, but I noticed looking back at last year's and this year's, the Inspire Passionate Learners with Growth Mindsets sits there with no green underneath. And I was just wondering if you could comment. I mean, I know we do this, but I'm a big proponent of the growth mindset. Yes. So I didn't know if there was anything specific or targeted that you were considering adding to this maybe next year in year 3, or if you're working on anything.
So, we certainly could. One of the things that Jen and I talked about today was, and, I know that I've had this conversation with you too, that, something like Hopkins is changing some of the report card criteria. So what they're kind of looking at, and not just those academic pieces anymore, but really, how are kids able to sort of navigate their own learning and to sort of budget their time and chunk things and to self-regulate and do all of those things that are related to learning, and understand that it's kind of okay if you're not there yet, right? And that everyone learns at a different pace, and everyone has sort of their own interests and talents, and those are the kinds of things that I think we're doing all over the district. And Jen can probably explain better, but we were also in the process of looking at the Elmwood and Marathon report cards to do something similar, so the parents really have a sense of how their kids are performing in those realms in school. And when we shut down on March 10th, that kind of put, a halt to that work for the, 2 lower elementary schools, but I think we'll be picking that work back up again. Tomorrow morning, Jen's running an elementary leadership team meeting, and that is on the agenda. So I don't know if there's a little bit you want to say about.
Sure. I think that Hopkins kind of took the lead in looking at some of the CASEL strategies, in terms of really looking at students globally, kind of things Carol talked about, taking social responsibility, emotional regulation, things like that. And so that had become a topic of conversation around the table at the Hopkins School Council level. And so that's, the group of parents and faculty really felt strongly that they wanted to try something. And that school was ready to move ahead, and the other 2 schools were not quite there yet. So we agreed that this past year, Hopkins would change that one portion of their report card to reflect a different way of kind of looking at and then reporting on students' ability to take responsibility and self-regulation and things like that. So I actually today kind of looked at the Hopkins report card and the Elmwood and Marathon report card, and to be perfectly honest, they're not all that different. The way Hopkins kind of put it together, categorized things with some different titles that better reflected some of the CASEL social and emotional strategies, and we will get there with the other 2 schools. I think Hopkins felt that it was very nicely received, and to Carol's point, we were in the middle of that work, and then we suddenly were charged with turning report cards upside down to reflect a completely different way of reporting last spring. So, but we will get back there.
I do remember hearing with the school improvement plan about the report cards at Hopkins, and I think was it Hopkins who was adding new sets of comments as well to the report card, the comment bank? I think one of the schools was looking at comments.
Well, last spring we did also. We had to update some of the comments, and we did provide the teachers with some comments that were more reflective of the way that learning was examined last spring. The elementary schools don't necessarily have a comment bank. We provided them with some sample narratives that might have been helpful for families as they were trying to navigate what does a report card mean in the middle of a school shutdown. But that certainly the way that we report, we want to make sure that it's something that families understand and can relate to. They're a little dense in terms of the standards and the number of check boxes that are on, especially when we talk about the elementary level, and that will end up being a longer range project for us to really look at the report card itself and make a decision as to whether or not it's really as helpful as it can be for our families.
Yeah. And one more thing that I will just say about that bullet, thank you, Jen, is that if you go through Hopkins or the middle school, and one day I actually did this, you'd think, don't you have more important things to do with your time? But I looked at all of the messaging that's all over the walls and just took picture after picture after picture, and that kind of messaging is everywhere. It's just really woven into the kinds of thinking that we're trying to generate with the kids. I was actually very surprised. I mean, it was kind of a just sort of an experimental thing I had done, but I was stunned to see how many different ways that those messages are manifest, whether you're in the middle school guidance department or you're in English teacher's classroom. It's everywhere, and it's really lovely how frequently we see that. So it didn't get green font, because I'm not sure that it rises to the level of some of the other initiatives that we have, but certainly the work is there.
So I'm just checking with Meg, so go ahead, Leah.
So I love this. I think it's awesome, but I wanted to bring up the diversity section, if you could shift to the other. So just a couple questions. One of them is, I'm really interested in the grassroots diversity work, because I think of grassroots as coming from the bottom up, not as being controlled from the top down. So what does that kind of mean? What does that encompass?
So each of our buildings is doing something a little bit different. I mean, you know that maybe that Elmwood has had their cultural group that, just kind of started pretty organically. This year, there is a diversity task force that has started at the middle school and high school, and our two new assistant principals, Chris Ocampo and Laura Tice, have, started to do that work and have just invited people voluntarily to sort of join in this thing, and it's really happening in really lovely ways, I think. But I like that there's the grassroots kind of organic, this is what's happening in our buildings, because people are interested and devoted to it in like that sort of personal and passionate kind of way. But Jen has written a grant where we have a group called Blackprint coming in. We have grant money that we are spending on other consultants, such as Visions, so we do have, I think, things coming from the bottom and things coming from the top and addressing a lot of different groups. So maybe a good example of just some of the more organic-y kinds of things that have taken place. On Tuesday, we had our admin council meeting, and it went for 2 hours, and the first half hour, we had the president of the Worcester India Society come and talk to us about, acculturation and assimilation and integration, and how, it takes time for people when they are first in a community to kind of assimilate and integrate and acculturate into sort of the fabric of the community, but you have to have that kind of commitment and to the work and commitment to time. And then we did 3 chapters from So You Want to Talk About Race, and then we did a little bit of the bright spot stuff, and I think if, we're looking at some of that, the voice and advocacy skills stuff, we were looking at where in our schools are you as building principals seeing kids kind of have an understanding of who they are as they live in the school community, and what kinds of inner strength do they have, and what kind of voice and passion do they bring, and how do they exercise that voice and autonomy. And it was really surprising, some of the sort of individualized and lovely things that we saw at Elmwood and the middle school and the high school, so it was really very nice to do that. So that's really what we had done as a group, and I like that we're not only thinking about COVID or only thinking about curriculum. We're thinking about other things that really matter in our community.
And I think one other point I wanted to make is I like that you have the ensure support personnel staffing as ample to meet the students' needs, because one of the things that I found happens when people get into diversity training is they think about how to get people up to speed, right? How to get people up to the level. But in the process, the minority people, the underrepresented people, et cetera, are still sort of waiting in the sidelines for people to catch up so that they can get support, have the right discussions, et cetera. So I really appreciate that that's up there, and I really hope that that's a key part of the whole plan.
Yes, and one of the things, Jen and I had attended a workshop, and the presenter at the workshop had said, if you're going to do that sort of grassroots kind of stuff, you've got to make sure that the people who are kind of running that are people who have been kind of trained, because to just let anyone do that, you kind of don't really know what you don't really know. The trainer had said to us, it can be dangerous to do that. So even our sort of grassroots kind of thing has to have some kind of mechanism to ensure that the train is moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, I would like to approve this. So I would entertain a motion to approve the district strategic plan for this year.
So moved.
Motion by Nancy.
Second.
Second by Leah, and Meg, I need to unmute you, or you need to unmute you. I need to take a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
Meg? Hold on.
Just sound away.
She has control of her audio.
Oh.
She's not responding. Okay, well, I'm an aye as well.
It's 4.
And that's 4. I'm going to take Meg as a not present for this vote. Okay, so it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, will this go up on your page of the district website? Where can the community access this readily, 3 months from now when they're wondering, what was that about again?
Yeah, I would like to get it on the homepage, and then it would be fine if it was on my page as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. That brings us to the tutoring for pay.
She was an aye on the vote.
Oh, she was an aye on the vote. Is it okay if I amend the vote to 4 ayes? It's unanimous. Thank you, Meg. Okay.
There must be a delay.
I think we're in a delay. So we're now moving on to the tutoring for pay policy, policy GCRD. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, so we have made absolutely no revisions to this policy, but we do know that it has to come back for review from time to time. We have looked at this, and I think that the one place where and again, we have not made any changes, but where concern has been expressed in the policy working group is with the sentence that says in paragraph 2, a Hopkinton teacher cannot recommend that one of his/her own students receive tutoring. And when we had the conversation, we did say that previously administration has believed that teachers shouldn't be able to simply say to parents, you should get a tutor. It should feel to the teacher like the onus for that education or the student's education or the instruction should be on the teacher. So that's where I think the sort of strangeness comes in here, and I think that, part of the policy working group also felt like, well, why not? If a parent believes that a student might benefit from, a tutor that can help a student in science or in math, then why couldn't the teacher do that? So I sort of leave that to all of you for discussion. So, anything else that you have on your mind?
Has there been a problem or any difficult situations due to the wording that is currently there?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's how I would approach it.
I think historically, we've just wanted to make sure that if a teacher in the district was tutoring students, those students were not her own, so that we're not paying that teacher to be the teacher and also to be the tutor. That would not seem appropriate. And, if they're going to be tutoring, that they are using their own materials, not school-sponsored or school-funded materials, and those kinds of things.
But I also agree with the philosophy of, teachers should be the ones educating, So if there hasn't been a problem with that current wording, I would tend to want to leave it.
I think we looked at the mask version and we thought that was clear, and I don't know why we didn't put it in, but we did look at the mask version of just those 2 sentences, so I agree. I think we would know if there was an issue, right? If it's one student out of an entire classroom that's getting told that you might need some tutoring versus, this teacher seems to have like 10 students every year that need to, so I think that that's something that on a case-by-case basis we would be able to discern probably.
The only concern I have, I agree, I think if you see a trend, that's certainly a concern, but the other concern I would have would be that if a teacher is recommending that a child in his or her class get tutoring, is there then some kind of potential that a student's would be being referred to get tutoring when in fact what the child might need would be remediation or special education services or something that the school ought to be providing for the child rather than having it go out and kind of putting the burden on the parent when the school really owns the problem.
And there may be parents who are not aware that special education services, after testing and being found eligible, is an option. They might just think, okay, I do need to have my child tutored then.
And certainly there are places where parents would want to fill in different things for different reasons for tutoring, but to me, if the school comes to me and says to me, your child needs a tutor, my response back would be to kind of question, well, what's not being done in the classroom.
Agreed. Just a point of clarification, is that sentence in there already, or you're...
It is.
Yeah,
this is exactly how the policy looks now.
Advocating to keep it there, Nancy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And I think if we go to the MASC website, you can see that their language is just a little bit different on that.
Sorry, Amanda, just to follow up. So you're advocating to leave it the way it is?
I am advocating to leave it the way it is.
Right.
But
I agree with your argument.
Okay.
I mean, I hadn't considered that, but you're right? Like, not every person educating students has the same level of training in special education or in particular types of special education. So having the student assessed in a more kind of formal manner by the school before deciding that they need something like tutoring is, yeah, okay. I agree with that.
Just trying to follow along with, Meg is asking to sort of she's re-asking why the MASC language was not used. I do not, Meg, if you can hear me, do you want to unmute? You're at the microphone, so we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I think we can. Pretty well, yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I speak about what I thought?
Please.
So I thought the original mask policy was actually clearer, and that it said a teacher cannot recommend that one of his or her own students get tutored and then be paid to tutor that same student in a second job. I think that the mask policy has a couple more statements to it that filled it out more, and I think that's what I emailed you and Leah about last week. I'm not sure what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, if you give me a second, I can...
Meg, is it a statement that says a teacher may not tutor students who are currently in their class, even if the teacher has not recommended the current student receive private tutoring, the teacher should not tutor current students? I wonder if we want to maybe send this back, even though we do review this, and just kind of take another look at the MASC language within the policy working group?
Yeah, please.
One more time. I think that's what Meg would like to do, and I don't think there's a reason to rush it.
Yeah.
I think we understand the intent of it, so maybe getting the language clear, and kind of examining, well, like we usually do, when we differ from MASC, it's always kind of good to think why, and what are we gaining, what's different about Hopkinton. So if I might recommend we just send that back, if you don't mind.
Could I just offer additional input? I just want to make sure we're not in any way inadvertently or explicitly preventing teachers from offering extra help after school. In fact, we might want to add that would be an expectation that we might have in certain cases.
No, we would expect, I think it's the secondary teachers in the teacher contract. It does say that teachers must be available from 2 to 2:45 for additional help after school. Yep. So this certainly would not, be in lieu of that. In the MASC policy, it does say that a teacher, and this is universal, that a teacher cannot recommend that one of his or her own students get tutoring and then be paid to tutor that student in a second job. So, that's, understood universally.
Yeah. I understand the intent. Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go back and look at MASC language. I mean, this is really the first time we're looking at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good option, especially where one of the sub-working group members isn't here, and there are some questions. So, great. Thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for taking it back.
Sure.
All right, I think that brings us up to superintendent evaluation focus indicators.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Yes, so this topic for the community, every year we evaluate the superintendent, and we use a rubric provided by the state, and the recommendation for the school committee is that each year we pick a subset of focus indicators, elements, and not try to write and justify evaluations across, I don't know how many there are, but there are many, 40, 50 elements. So the recommendation is that you pick about 8 or so, and that they span the different areas that we need to evaluate on. So this is our opportunity to ask Dr. Kavanaugh for this year to point to us which indicators you think are most relevant for the current year.
So one of the things that the department has done this year is they have sent out 6 different indicators under the 4 standards that they are recommending that school districts focus on. And Jen put something together that was great to share with the teachers, and indicated to the teachers that if they wanted to use those, we would be happy to have that happen. I have chosen several of them, but not all 6 of them. And I'll just talk a little bit about the ones that I've chosen and sort of why. So under Standard 1, I did both curriculum and instruction. For folks at home, if you have never seen that rubric, the language that you see under 1A curriculum is exactly what it says in the department's rubric. So it would say that the superintendent empowers administrators to ensure all instructional staff collaboratively plan, adapt as needed, and implement standards-based units comprised of well-structured lessons, aligned to state standards and local curricula, continually monitors and assesses progress, and provides additional supports as needed. So then we take that particular indicator and we say, does that align to the superintendent's goals? And so it does align to my first goal and my 4th goal, the reading goal, as well as the instruction around COVID, I think. And then it also takes the district improvement plan, which you just saw, and it shows areas where it will align to the district improvement plan. So I do think that curriculum and instruction are always important things for the superintendent to be taking a look at. And when you do your goals, which have already been approved, you know that you have to have a professional practice, a district improvement, and also a student achievement one. So I think curriculum and instruction fit nicely into student achievement. So I also chose 1B, instruction. And I don't know if you want me to go through all of them individually, but you can see that they too are aligned to 3 of the goals and several of the items on the district improvement plan. And then when we got to Standard 2, I chose environment, which empowers all administrators to develop and execute reflective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, and emotional and social needs of all students throughout the district as evidenced by, and I won't actually go through all of that, but I chose that one because I really think it's appropriate given where we are with the coronavirus and our need to make sure that kids are socially distanced and eating at 6.5 feet and taking mask breaks responsibly and entering and exiting the schools responsibly. So I thought that that one was an important one given the year. Under Standard 2, I also chose laws, ethics, and policies, and I chose that one even though you don't see it attached to goals or the district improvement plan, because provides the resources and support for all school personnel to understand and comply with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, and ethical guidelines. And so in addition to policy, which I'm always working on, this will be the year that we engage in renegotiating a successor agreement with the Hopkinton Teachers Association. So I thought that that was an important one for the work that I would be doing around negotiating. And as soon as we get the letter from the association indicating that they are ready to reopen the contract and negotiate, we'll begin that process. So we're just waiting on their letter. I chose 2E, Fiscal Systems, leads the administrator team to develop a district budget aligned with the district's vision, mission, and goals that addresses the needs of all students, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district school level goals, and seeks alternate funding sources as needed, proactively communicates budget rationale to staff, community members, municipal stakeholders, and the school committee, provides regular updates on implementation of the budget. And, that's one that we would be doing every year, but I think that it ties nicely with Goal 3 and Goal 5, and I think it's a really important one this year, given the fact that we have no idea what money is going to look like and what need is going to look like. So I think that one's a kind of tricky one for this year. In Standard 3, I chose communication, supports and empowers all administrators to engage in regular two-way culturally responsive communications with families about student learning and performance. District-wide communications with families are provided in multiple formats and respect and affirm different families' home languages, culture, and values. I think that one just fits in nicely with my goals as well as the district improvement plan. In Standard 4, I chose cultural proficiency, lead stakeholders to develop and implement culturally responsive policies and practices that acknowledge the diverse backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges of administrators, students, and staff, empowers administrators with time, resources, and supports to build culturally responsive learning environments, and collaborates with community members to create a culture that affirms individual differences, models as practice for others. And again, ties in nicely to Goal 2 and into the district improvement plan. 4C, communications, utilizes and models strong context and audience-specific interpersonal written and verbal communication skills, actively seeks and incorporates feedback into the decision-making and communication rationale for decisions to staff, family, community members, and school committee. Again, ties in nicely. And then I also chose 4F, and you will see again that that does not tie into a specific goal necessarily or to something in the district improvement plan. But in reading that one, I will read it aloud to you, models a variety of strategies for responding respectfully and effectively to disagreement and dissent, and resolves conflicts in a constructive manner such that all parties are able to move forward productively, regularly strives to achieve consensus within the district and school communities while maintaining a commitment to decisions that are in the best interest of students, empowers and supports administrators to use these approaches in their own leadership. And I included that one because, as you know, we have had difficulty in reaching an agreement with the Teachers Association, and so for me, myself personally, I would like to work on that this year and to, kind of restore some of the relationships with the teaching force in Hopkinton. They're the critical, on the front lines players in our district, and I think it's just really important that we start to restore those relationships, and I know we've talked about that as well. So if there are other things that you would like to see, or if you're seeing things that you don't want to see, we're happy to talk about what the indicators are. If you need time to digest them, that's fine as well.
I think you have boldly walked into some heavy hitters here for this year. I mean, I don't know which of these were on the 6 recommended list, but I imagine the first 3 might have been. I mean, curriculum delivery, instruction.
Yes, the first 3 absolutely were.
Must have been, right, and environment. I think those are critical for right now, personally. To me, I love the breadth of both your management role and your diversity goals is well represented here, which is obviously a key focus for our district and a very important topic. So I think you've chosen many. You typically go above and beyond. So here you are once again, going above and beyond. This is probably more than recommended, but I personally think these look great. I don't know what you all think. Questions? Or
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I like the academic one and in the environment in schools. I think you're already a long way into it. In fact, with what you've done in schools around COVID planning, the collective bargaining has been an eye-opener for me, and I think it's great that you're jumping into the policy ethics kind of as one of the goals related. Cultural, of course, and then managing conflict is tricky. I mean, that is the right way to take accountability for it, but, and you mentioned the teachers, but it's the union, too. The teachers are great, but there's this big entity called the union, and they have an interest in creating conflict. It's a method of operation of unions. It's one of their tactics. So you may not be able to reduce that level of conflict because it's in their interest to create it in some cases. But I think it's noble of you to kind of strive to manage the conflict in a way that's productive for the objectives we have for our students.
I love these. I'm going to say managing conflict is something that I have to learn to do every year, and I always have to get better at it, so I think it's a worthwhile goal. It's always hard to figure out what to say in certain situations, how to deal with certain situations in a way that is constructive. So yeah, I fully appreciate you taking this on. Can you scroll up to the diversity pieces? So the cultural proficiency, that's what I wanted to see. Okay, good partnerships between family and school. So once again, when I looked at this, I was like, this is very staff heavy. I keep wanting to see that framework for the students in the place as well. Like, while we're doing all this training, we're putting all this in place, and we're doing all these things so that students who are having to wait for all this training to get through are having some kind of support system in place within the school where they can go, they can talk about whatever's, and I know that counseling service is here, but I don't know, I wanted to see a little bit more of that, but I think otherwise it's really good.
I think, just to be clear, if I'm not mistaken, the indicator language is set. We don't get to control the indicator side. I think the other two sides were Dr. Kavanaugh mapping the indicator language to things that were already cited in our strategic plan. It doesn't mean that that's the sum total of what you're going to do, right? I mean, right. You were just mapping for relevance.
Yes.
Yes.
And I am not saying that these aren't the things that should be here. I'm just saying I would like to have that thought in people's minds as they're thinking about diversity. Once again, it's really, really easy to think about all the training that needs to happen, all the people that need to learn more, all the structure that needs to be in place for them to be able to have these hard conversations. But while that's going on, there are all these people who, and students in this case, who are already kind of in the crossfire of those hard conversations, right? And they need to have outlets, and they need to have places to go while everything else is catching up to them. That's all that I wanted to make sure is thought about.
I misunderstood. I thought you wanted to tweak the language, and that you hadn't been through this. I wasn't sure if you thought the indicator language was ours.
Yeah, no, that wasn't.
Oh, that is right up, that is with students.
Yes, yes. So, and Jen, you can talk about Grant Hightower. So there is a consultant that we are bringing in to work with our kids, but I'll let Jen talk about it because I know that you've done a lot of work with Jen Suker and...
Sure, I think that your point is really a great one, and I think our work with Carol when we were doing some of the planning this summer was to try to consider the things that you're talking about. You know, we have, to your point, the really important piece of training our faculty, but we have these kids who are sitting there who also need the supports and some of the information. So with this new position, Director of Access Equity ELL, Jen Suker, she's done a tremendous job right now helping to support the goals that Carol's put in place for us, and she has secured a consultant for us named Grant Hightower, and you may have heard us refer to him in some of these meetings. But the real reason we brought him in and we had him meet with some of our principals and with Carol and myself and Jen, and the real purpose of bringing him in was to have a very different job than the other consultant firm that we're working with. So Blackprint's work with us is really going to be designed to build our leadership capacity and repertoire of strategies and our overall knowledge. But Grant's work with us is really going to be feet on the ground with students. And right now we're in the midst of planning work that he's going to do specifically with our 8th graders our 5th graders and our 9th graders. And we had some pretty specific reasons for choosing students at those particular grade levels. 5th grade is a great curricular connection, and we're getting ready to send them off to middle school. Grade 8 and grade 9, we've seen some kind of historic ways that 13, 14, 15-year-olds present themselves and understand the world. And when we met with Grant, we felt that his knowledge base and really his dynamic personality was going to be very supportive of our students. And his role is actually going to be twofold, because he's been hired to really work with our kids, but when he's working with our students, he's also working with our faculty. So I do think, to your point, it takes time to grow some of these things, and especially with the topic that's really challenging for many, many of us to tackle and feel comfortable with and discuss. But I do think we're trying to manage both things at once.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, we were in a room with him, I think, for 5 minutes and recognized that he just had the perfect demeanor for kids. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Did you have any?
Sue, to echo a lot of what's been said about the indicators in general, I love what you've chosen. I think you did pick some challenges this year, and I think I particularly appreciate the jumping in with the managing conflict and acknowledging that we were not able to reach agreement with the HTA, and hoping to kind of move forward with some rebuilding and restoring there. And I commend you for your work on all of this. And again, back to what I said on the other thing, I love how the formatting of all of this has changed. I know some of this is just the way the evaluations changed, but I like how you put it all together neatly and tied it to both your own goals and the district initiatives. Thank you.
I think this is great. I really like this sort of new practice of picking focus indicators. I really think it's a great conversation, and it really works as intended, I think, to focus on a certain subset. It just seems so much more meaningful than the first year that I was involved in evaluations. This was not the practice that was recommended, or we didn't do this here. I'm not sure what it was because I was new, but I really like this discussion and the way it gave you a chance to think about your own focus area. So thank you for the thought you put into this, and I think it's a good way to go. Meg did not have any questions on the indicators, but I would entertain a motion to approve the indicators that were selected. And Meg, prepare to vote, please. I'm just typing that. It's a lot to manage tonight.
So I'd make the motion.
A motion by Nancy to accept the indicators as selected by Dr. Kavanaugh.
Second.
Second by Joe, and I'll do a roll call vote. Meg? Aye. Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. It's unanimous, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
That moves us on to policy BBA, school committee powers and duties. This is the third reading. I don't believe this has changed. I think this is as it was pretty much from MASC, more or less. I think there may be one change in there. I don't know. But did we receive any comments? I didn't receive any comments on this.
Not on that one.
No.
So once again, for the community, policy BBA is a statement of the responsibilities of school committee members. It's pretty academic, but it does outline, for good transparency and communication with the community and all stakeholders, what it is that we are charged with doing, so that it's clear to everybody. I'm comfortable with moving ahead to accept this and add it to our policy manual. We don't have this currently, so we're just adding this in. Meg gave it a thumbs up. So if anyone would like to make a motion to accept policy BBA. Motion by Meg.
Second.
Second by Joe. I'll do a roll call vote. Meg? Aye. Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so that passes. Thank you, Meg. That brings us to policy ACAB, harassment. This is the second reading. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay. So this is a very long policy, and I think, as we had said last time, We used to have this policy, and I think over time, as laws change and you get new legal advisements, pieces of text were just kind of chiseled together, and forms were floating all over the district for how do you report sexual harassment, and it felt like the policy had become disorganized, unwieldy, all of those things. So when the policy working group got together, we took MASCs and looked at it and said, this is so much better than what we have in terms of organization. And we also noted that MASC had just updated this, I think, in July of 2020. So again, what you see here, we did keep those highlighted pieces in there because we struggled with them a little bit. Written, verbal, or physical harassment or abuse, this includes texting, blogging, or other technological methods. I think we did move some text around there. And then implied or explicit threats concerning one's grades, achievements, or other school matters. That one we thought was a little bit strange because we were thinking about student-to-student harassment, and we wondered, is harassment, whether implied or explicit, limited to things like grades or achievement, and then you just get that very broad other school matter. So that was where we struggled a little bit, but other than that, we didn't take issue with this particular, the rest of that document.
So, question just arising from the public comment that we had is there a procedural piece that's not part of this policy that is being put out differently?
So I think if or when this is an adopted policy, I think we will need to adjust our forms. And the other thing that you'll see when you go to the website is that we really need to be very clear who the person is that you would report issues of sexual harassment to, any Title IX concerns, any Title VI concerns. Typically, if it's student concerns, it goes to the Director of Student Services. If it's adult to adult, it goes to Human Resources. So all of that, I think, will need to be, sort of the practices that go along with the policy. What are the protocols? What's the provisions? Like, how does it work, essentially?
I was just highlighting that more to answer the public comment that we had earlier. I would envision something perhaps like what we did with the bullying policy.
The bullying policy is, by law, it's supposed to be reviewed every 2 years. But even when those changes are made, because there's a committee that comes together and very deliberately looks at it and reads through and decides what's outdated, it hasn't become this sort of, amalgamation of muck. You know what I mean? And the previous harassment policy had. So I do like what you're saying about bringing people together who could review this periodically. Yeah.
So to the emailer's question, does the sexual harassment policy have more procedure in it? With this one, we picked it up from MASC. I think that was the question, right? Our sexual harassment policy has more of an indication of how to report.
I think it does, and I may have actually looked at it. Is it AC? Is that, because I may have looked at it actually very recently. I think it is. I think sexual harassment is AC, and I think harassment is ACAB, if I'm not incorrect.
Sexual harassment is ACAB.
It is, sexual harassment is covered under this policy.
This is the same, it's one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ours used to be, I believe, just AC, I think. And maybe I'm wrong about that, or maybe we just reviewed AC and ACAB is this one.
Our AC is non-discrimination and civil rights notice to students, parents, and employees.
Okay.
Our current ACAB is sexual harassment, so would this harassment replace our sexual harassment policy? So this is all-inclusive.
It is. AC, did we just recently review that? I think we did.
AC?
Not so long ago.
I will tell you in one moment.
Thank you. Or maybe it's part of that folder that we just kept putting aside.
No, we amended it in January of 2020.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So for ACAB, I think, so the writer was citing that our existing policy may be a mix of policy and procedure. And so what is not shown in your draft is the link to whatever forms, I think, that we would add.
Do we want it to be a mix of policy and procedure, or were we just a few meetings ago talking about let's take the procedure language out of some other policy?
Yeah, no, I don't think we want to. But I don't
But is that one of the reasons why it's rather lengthy?
I actually usually question this, and I don't think this one has a lot of procedure.
It does not, but I would envision that it would have, usually we have a cross-reference at the bottom. Once the procedure is put in place under the cross-reference things at the bottom, it could be a footnote, procedure, whatever, that would direct people to the procedural piece.
It actually does have sort of a step-by-step in the current policy. It says, each employee of the Hopkins Public Schools has the affirmative responsibility to create an environment free of sexual harassment and to report any explicit and probable sexual harassment following the district's reporting procedures, and then it references the form, ACABR1, and then there's a whole bulleted list of, once the principal is made aware of the situation that may constitute sexual harassment, he or she must take the following actions, and there's a bulleted list. I don't think that's in the new policy, is it? Immediately report any suspected or reported harassment, notify parents, etc.
So this one says, the superintendent, in consultation with the Title IX coordinator, shall designate the principal of each school in the district or their designee as the initial entity to receive the sexual harassment complaint. Also, in a matter of sexual harassment, the district shall require that the Title IX coordinator be informed as soon as possible of the filing of the complaint. Nothing in this policy shall prevent any person from reporting the prohibited conduct to someone other than those above designated complaint recipients, etc. So it does talk about who the primary point of contact is, etc., but then it doesn't go into great detail about how that point of contact is supposed to handle all the steps.
Yeah. I know we talked last time about disability and ability and adding that to the, I don't see it as an addition, so I'm wondering if you hit a roadblock in doing that.
Yeah, maybe we just didn't get it in there.
Okay.
Oh, that's really odd, because we did write it in our draft.
We did.
It was in there.
So I don't see it in the packet. Maybe we got the wrong version. Sometimes happens. Meg's nodding.
Yeah, it was definitely in what we edited.
Do we want to wait to approve it until we can put a cross-reference to the procedure in?
I think so, and I also think it's good for the community to see the final wording. If the wrong version maybe got into the packet, I think this is an important policy. So, so if everyone's okay with that, we'll defer one more week. Meg's nodding. All right, back up to the agenda. We are now at policy IHBHE. They add more letters every time we go on. Teleeducation, this is the first reading. It is replacing, I believe, the first reading of a live streaming policy that came to us last time. Dr. Kavanaugh.
That is correct. We took a look at that live streaming policy and we messed around with it for a little bit. And again, we just felt like some of the language was amiss and the formatting wasn't quite right. And then even our definitions, and it all just didn't feel right. So we talked a lot about how we kept almost using teleconferencing and live streaming interchangeably. And so we talked about that sort of really broad term of teleeducation, because we feel like that can mean anything from a conference with your guidance counselor to somebody live streaming a math lesson to, maybe even the coach who wants to put something out to his entire team remotely. So all of those kind of pieces that we would say are educational could be covered under teleeducation. And then we felt like we needed to talk about why a teleeducation policy would be important to the Hopkinton Public Schools. And then we began the definitions piece.
Excuse me, could you just talk about why, could you highlight that, the why? Because if there's people who are watching, it's not maybe clear what this is intended to do.
I will actually read that whole opening paragraph. It's a brief paragraph, but I do think it's an important one to cover. The school committee recognizes that teleeducation may be helpful to the district and its employees in fulfilling its educational mission, maintaining educational continuity, and in expanding the reach of school district events and activities to those not able to attend in person. Teleeducation comprises all forms of electronically supported learning and teaching. The school committee further recognizes that without parameters, teleeducation may pose legal risks to the district and its employees. So that was our thinking, and we were happy to take questions, comments, doubts, difficulties, whatever about that particular language. And then we moved into how do we want to define our terms, and we chose to just list them alphabetically. So if people are wondering why asynchronous is separated from synchronous, we felt like an alphabetical listing of the terms would be okay. So we used asynchronous, live streaming, synchronous, and video conferencing. And I know that there would be people who would say, but wait a minute, if I go to like the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it will tell me that live streaming is pretty much one way. So the teacher's in the classroom doing their thing, and a very passive learner is sitting at home in a way that is not interactive, but just kind of taking in everything that's happening in that classroom. And then we thought about, sort of that video conferencing, but we didn't think that quite fit that scenario either. So I think live streaming to us felt just a little bit better. I mean, it still allows a learner at home to interact and with, especially with the equipment that we have in the Hopkinton Public Schools in some of our classrooms, the at-home learner can put up his hand and ask a question, and the teacher can, go to the board and do a math problem or, have a conversation with that student individually, even while he's at home, which does kind of border on video conferencing. So we were in a little bit of a murky place because I don't know that either one of these terms is really good to talk about what we're doing, but we chose live streaming over video conferencing because we felt like that was a more apt term.
Is it possible for us to just use the words that we want to express rather than pick up a canned term that may not express what we mean?
For example?
Interactive teleeducation or something like that. You just use words that explain that you want the interaction to be bidirectional. I mean,
yeah.
If live streaming means something else and we're trying to change its definition, it might be better to just use words that mean what words that say what we mean.
I agree with you. I'm not wild about using live streaming to encapsulate all of what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I do think that as a school district, and we're in the incipient stages of this, we've started to use that term pretty widespread. So if we're going to think about what that term should be, we should come up with something that is very precise and, try to cultivate that term now so that we are all using it.
Yeah, I mean, there must be, in academic literature recently, are there any articles about this, or, teleeducation, bidirectional, or interactive teleeducation?
We can certainly do a little bit of research on that. In the circles that, superintendents are traveling in, we are using live streaming to mean this, even though I think if you look back to the late 90s when this would have become a term that people, middle to late 90s, this would be a term that didn't mean what it means right now to us.
Right, yeah, streaming tends to mean like when you stream a movie and you're just sitting there watching the stream come through.
Or like HCAM is currently live streaming on Facebook Live.
Right.
So it's going out there, it's live and synchronous. People can comment in the comment section, but their video is not shared.
Yeah, and it might be that some of these terms, things change fast in technology. Some of these terms expressed what the capabilities were at some time in the past, whereas now capabilities have advanced to a point where we need to create new words to explain what we're doing with the technology. And we're on the cutting edge, so it's all right to use words to express what we're doing. Just my thought.
Another thing that we changed to make it more equitable, originally we had home and a school, and we realized that there may be kids who are not able to do it at home. Maybe they go to the library, etc. So we changed that to remote. And then we also changed number 4 based on feedback that we got last time from a parent of a young elementary school student about having to be helping the students, so they had to be in video. So we changed number 4 to basically say they may not interject comments or any other critique during class or attempt to participate on behalf of their child, but we said nothing about them being in the frame and helping the student out anymore, because we recognized that we had missed that. So that was another piece that we changed.
Dr. Cameron, did you have more presentation, or should we just move into discussion?
No, I think we might just move into discussion. I think when, we get down to part 2, we get into more of that sort of legalese, right? What are the expectations for teachers, for parents, for students?
Okay, I'm going to tap Meg. If I think she wants to make some comments, and that she was on the subcommittee with you guys. Meg, are you going to comment?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think we can.
Okay, I couldn't get everything that was said, so I apologize if I'm being redundant. But under Roman numeral 2, number 1, I was so troubled by this, and I still am, a sentence in the middle of that paragraph that parents, guardians are responsible for their child's use of the provided technology. Because I know that there are a number of students who are at home without parental supervision during the day because their parents have to work. So I just wanted to throw that out there to see what other people thought. And I also wanted to draw your attention to Roman numeral 5. I had a couple of people ask me questions about that. So that might be a section that we want to lend some more clarity to. I don't think it's really clear what it means.
Meg, what was the nature of the questions that you received?
Possibly interpreting what parents were signing away. That educators would continue to maintain the privacy of student record information, and that they would take reasonable measures to preserve the privacy. So there was some concern there about student privacy that we might just want to discuss, and that parents should waive any claims against the district related to the use of these third-party vendors.
Okay. Do you have any other sections to highlight?
No, just those 2 for now.
So based on Meg's concerns, there was a change from the live streaming policy in number 1. It might still not be tweaked enough, but originally the live streaming policy said parents, guardians are responsible for monitoring their child's use of the provided services and programs. And the monitoring of use was part of the big discussion we had that had a lot to do with, well, if you have a teenager helping their younger brother or sister because their parents are off at work, that's a lot of onus to place on the parents who aren't there in terms of monitoring the child's use of the software, etc. So that's when we changed it to say parents and guardians are responsible for their child's use of the provided technology. So we're not putting the onus of monitoring, but we're still saying, okay, you can leave your older child helping your younger one, but you are still sort of responsible for like the school equipment that they're using, and for, you have a certain responsibility for that. That may not be tweaked enough, but I just wanted to give the history that we've already kind of started to try to go down that road. So if anyone has comments on that, that's great.
I have a question on that, just for clarification. So it sounds like what we're looking at is protecting the district's equipment. So for example, in non-COVID years, it was really, I think, just the middle schoolers who were bringing home school-owned Chromebooks. back and forth between school, and there was if your child had egregiously broken the device, there was a responsibility on the parent for the upkeep of the device.
And there's a whole acceptable use policy, like signing that you do about the equipment and the software that the child is using, like you do it every year, right? If my child agrees to use the resources given to them by the school in the correct way, and they won't do this, and they won't do that with it, etc. That's sort of what we were like, okay, they already signed that, so they're still responsible for that, but we're not going to put the onus, like I said, of monitoring the child using it if they can't be there.
Yeah, I don't think this is really about using technology. I think that this is about behavior when using technology. And I think that if we go back a couple of sentences, the student code of conduct applies to all live streaming sessions. Students may be disciplined consistent with the student code of conduct for violating school rules during the sessions. So I think what the district is trying to get at is if I'm taking this technology and I decide that I'm going to use it to make a threat against a public figure, for example, that the school department isn't responsible for the child's behavior doing that, the child and the parents are responsible for doing that. Or if a middle school kid says, wait, this is going to be great, I'm going to Zoom bomb another classroom in my middle school. You know, those are the kinds of things that I think we were trying to, or at least, you know, the attorneys are trying to get at when they give us this language.
So this is a different angle than what I was looking at it. It's not the device itself you're concerned about, it's the behavior of the kids. So in that case, I would argue that kids ought to be held accountable for those behaviors more so than the parents. I mean, if you have a child who is Zoom bombing, I'm going to guess there would be a high schooler who might not have if they have the know-how to Zoom bomb.
Yes, I think in terms of protection, the school district just wouldn't want somebody to say, well, wait a minute, you were the responsible teacher in a remote classroom, and that student was doing that while you were delivering instruction. Weren't you watching? You know, I mean, I think that the fear is that it would come back to the district as the teacher's fault, and not the kid's fault.
Sorry, that's helpful, because like Nancy, I wanted to ask, what are we trying to get at? And I think we just have to be really clear. Can we just why try to hide behind it with these vague words? Just, if we can be specific about what we're trying to protect and make those the words, I think that would be more helpful in enforcement too. What I wouldn't want to see is just some government entity telling parents what they should do in their house. And that's how it kind of read when I first saw it. So that parents are responsible for your children's behavior. It's like, well, okay, that's up to each household, and most parents would agree with that. Well, we don't need to write it in a school committee policy.
But it is as a privilege of being allowed to use this mode of education, right?
But let's add those words. You know, is it about protecting the equipment so it doesn't break, or is it about it's just another way to say what they've already signed on to in the acceptable use policy? If they've already agreed somewhere else, we really need to say it again here? If so, maybe just say as outlining the acceptable use policy. I don't know.
That might,
sorry.
I was going to say, I guess I would prefer something that puts the onus on the kids to make it clear what we're getting at, to say students will, be held accountable with potential disciplinary action or something of that for, use that's inconsistent with fill in the blank with something that matches what we're trying to say.
We had a long back and forth about that too, about who's the child, who's responsible, because I was asking the same questions, and if they're under 18, by default, I guess the parents are responsible, and if they're over 18, they're an adult, they're no longer a child. So I agree with you, but we have started to have those discussions. It is very fraught and very hard to figure out, like, where does the onus belong and when.
But while they may be under 18, if they do something, if they go down to Hopkinton Drug and they shoplift, they're going to be held responsible for their actions in that particular, the police aren't going to come for me, they're going to come for my kid, which my children aren't doing that. But do you know what I mean? That's, and as a parent, kind of where you take it beyond that, say if, this hypothetical situation, a kid gets picked up for shoplifting by the Hopkinton, police, and there's a consequence for the society, but what the consequence in my house would also be something that would be kind of, my child might not be allowed to go downtown alone, my child, and on, but it's, the way it reads to me, I think I feel a little bit of what Meg is saying, is that the parent is going to get a consequence. The parent is going to be held responsible when, in many cases, we know that there are children, adolescents, who are watching younger siblings, or, they're just high schoolers and adolescents that are home by themselves, or a babysitter, and if we flip so that we're doing fully remote district-wide at some point, which I hope we don't, but I know that there's a great potential that could happen, it's going to be more because parents aren't, two working parents or single-parent homes aren't able to kind of then balance, okay, I can work from home these days, but not those. There may be more situations where kids are Zooming or doing synchronous learning with their classes without a parent or guardian present. There's a lot of words to say. I'm not sure.
It was clear. Okay. No, it was clear.
It was clear.
Yeah, just in general, I know that lawyers are always trying to help us, right? They're trying to help protect us, but we have to be careful, how their efforts to protect us translates into what we're communicating to families and to students. If we step back, kids who are participating remotely would prefer to be in school, but there's circumstances they can't be. And I hope that we can make the kind of the spirit and the way this policy reads more aspirational for our hopes, for what we want the students to be able to, more about the students' rights when it comes to using this way of being educated. And right now, some of it seems, in the attorney's effort to help protect us legally, it can come across as kind of punitive. And I'd like to see more, where we can, aspirational language about the rights of our students in a teleeducation environment.
Sort of along your, simplification lines, first of all, I really love the direction.
I know it's difficult too, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in.
No, I love the direction. I know, this is the point. Even the live streaming, the jump from last policy to this policy has been huge. I think this is a really important policy, and it's hard to get right, because you guys are all paving new ground. But when I was reading it, I found some of the different sections sort of jumbled, and my head was doing a sort as I was reading it, and I was wondering, the first Roman numeral is definitions. That's kind of obvious. But the second Roman numeral is like a paragraph. So I was wondering if maybe we could look at simplifying and maybe make the second Roman numeral rights and requirements, or and then under that, when I was thinking about it, there's privacy, and that's where you get the no recording and blah, 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 student and family rights and requirements, teacher rights and instructor rights and requirements, intellectual property of teacher and or student, and then district requirements, because everybody has responsibilities, or however you want to, whatever the word is. I think it's all there, mostly. There were a few things I didn't see there that I was wondering about, but to me, I was sort of resorting the content that you came up with into buckets that were easier for me to digest. So I don't know if that's something you might consider. Are there better ways? Because the list doesn't seem to have a specific order yet. So that was one thought I had. There are a couple of thoughts. I think the first paragraph on the reason for this, it says, the school committee recognizes without parameters, teleeducation may pose legal risk to a district and its employees, and I think students and families. I think this is protecting everybody, whether it's what's happening in your home. I mean, I think it's just generally protective of all participants. I was wondering, in some cases, I wasn't really sure it was relevant whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. To me, I'm not sure that was, if there are specific things that we need to do differently when it's synchronous or asynchronous, fine. If we don't really need that language, maybe we could take it out. I don't know. I think we also say, we tend to list like parents and guardians, or parents, guardians, and household members. I think I highlighted, for example, 2.4, Roman number 2, number 4. I don't know if there's a broader way to say it, like only intended named participants may participate in teleeducation. Like, I don't know who else it could be. It could be my neighbor. It doesn't have to be a parent or guardian or household member.
What if we miss somebody?
It could be anybody. I think we maybe want to say it in the affirmative, that...
Enrolled students.
That makes sense, and we struggled with that too, so that
enrolled students. Well, I actually didn't like enrolled students, because in my head, a policy is not, obviously, it's not a practice. This will hopefully stand the test of time. So, for me, these technologies exist. We don't know when an extracurricular advisor or a coach or whomever in our district may decide that this is something that they need, especially now or next year. They may want to use this for robotics or whatever. So I hope that, like, I guess my other piece of advice was, can we all step back and look across all the different ways that we could maybe, within the broad school community, leverage these technologies, and will this hold up? Like, if you're talking about an extracurricular, does it still hold up? If it's a second grader, does it hold up? So I had kind of listed, and I shared, because of open meeting law, I just shared this with Dr. Kavanaugh, but I'm happy to share with the subcommittee, now that we're talking about it, just some of the things that I was thinking about. If you're ELL or SPED, if you're high needs, or, in the different cohorts or applications, will this hold up? And I think if we look at it across those different lenses, we'll probably find the holes. Because I'm hoping, like, I don't want to discourage that robotics coach, say, or the music instructor, or whoever is going to do a collaborative Zoom, from leveraging the technology if all participants agree and the policy is being adhered to. If that's a decision somebody wants to make, I mean, we have our live streaming, and the MOA is its own thing, but these are technologies. Facebook Live is out there. Google Hangouts is out there. There are all sorts of technologies that in this time might be useful, and I'm hoping that this gives everybody the safety and confidence to leverage those technologies where they want, but knowing that the participants are safe. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was kind of thinking along the sanity check. Like, once we step back from it, let's sanity check across all the applications we can think of and see where we find the holes. So
it's a great one,
yeah.
Sorry, Leah.
No. I really appreciate most of that. The asynchronous piece, I think, has to do a lot with the way materials are given to students, right? So synchronous, you're getting this just in time kind of coming at you, and you're told not to record it, so you're not supposed to keep it, right? But with asynchronous, you're getting materials and stuff, and so this is still owned by the school, right? You can't keep it outside the boundaries of what you've been told you can do with it. So I think that's why the asynchronous is being called out. So I do think it needs to be in there. We just may need to order it better.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't see a lot of usage of those terms in the detail, so then I was like, why do we define those? But I probably missed it, so.
No, but the rest of it makes a lot of sense. I really, like I said, we struggled with parents, we were trying to find inclusive language. And we were like, parents, guardians, household members, anybody who's in the house, and it was just like, how do we get to that? So I think you may be right, the positive language, the different spin on it may help us not have to do that.
We did get one email comment today as part of another email, and there was a question about, back to I think it was in the purpose. The emailer had said, we say the district recognizes, I think, where's the language? That the teleeducation may be helpful to the district. The emailer was saying, in the affirmative, it absolutely is required, I think was the language that was suggested. And I didn't want to comment in the email because, it's open lead law, here we are. But I think, again, this is policy, so it has to be sort of broadly applicable. And it may be, we don't know it's always required. I mean, I think that I'm okay with the broad language, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on it. I think you all saw the email probably. If there's anything else to say, I mean, I don't think we can say, let me look at the email wording, but I don't think we can say it is required.
Well, I think, if I'm recalling, the emailer's point was more that it's required in these times, where we're looking at.
She said is a necessary component for the district and its employees to successfully fulfill their educational mission, was the suggested language. And I think you're right. I think these times it seems necessary, but this policy is intended to be more timeless. I don't know if there's anything else. I just didn't want to overlook that comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, so we're creating a policy that would allow the district to implement this where necessary, right? Yeah.
We're leaving the where necessary to be the judgment of the instructor or the district. We're not, school committee is not saying when necessary in this policy. We can't really do that.
Exactly. We also took out the language that was confusing everybody about the weather related stuff.
So that may be a thing down the road.
Yeah. I think one thing that struck me about that comment, by the way, slightly aside from the policy, that email, was just the contrast she was making between her student being in live streaming classes and in the places where the student was not. And that made me feel really good about how well the teachers are embracing live streaming and how hard they've worked to make it useful and to make it do what it needed to do, because clearly the students who are in it are thriving, right? So that's a pretty big kudos, I think, for the teachers. Anyways, that was an aside, but yeah, we'll go back, we'll tackle this again with the comments that have been given. And like you said, this is a big, hard policy, so thank you so much for all the feedback.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you to all of you working on this, because the draft you brought forward the last time was also a tremendous amount of work, and I can see the shift from that to this. It was another, huge amount of work, so thank you for pushing us forward to what we need.
And you too, Meg. Meg did say the footer still mistakenly reads live streaming policy.
Yes, it does.
So I guess this is going to go for another reading. Thank you very much to everybody. Going back up top. Alrighty. Public comment. I need to take just a moment. I did receive an email that someone's public comment was not read.
Yeah, I think it just came just before 5 o'clock, so you might have missed it.
Okay. Do you have it to read? Can you find it?
I just saw it. Hold on.
There was no intention to overlook public comment?
So the one that I'm seeing that, because I did look at this, was from the individual that I read the comment from at the beginning, that the writer had said there were additional comments. Is that the one you mean?
Yeah.
I believe those, because I did a search then of the email today. I don't see others that came in today, but there were comments from our last meeting that were read out loud from the same individual. That one of them was Hopkinton Public School live streaming policy. Right, there was that, and a school committee public comment live streaming. I believe that was read at the last meeting.
Yes. Did you read the one from 4:51 p.m.?
We did.
We did read that at the beginning. That's the one that I read tonight.
Interesting, okay.
but the person may have missed that the comments made in 10, unless there were comments that got filtered out of our email somehow. I don't see any other comments from that individual that came in tonight other than the one that I read. And I do believe we read them all last.
I do believe we did, yep. So I think we're covered, but if we miss something, it is really a clerical error that I don't think any of us can account for right now, but we will be happy to read at the next meeting. That brings us to future agenda items. I will share one from Meg. Well, actually, Meg, do you want to share it yourself? There she is. Yep.
So I would love to have a discussion at a future school committee meeting, and I hope in the near future, a discussion of later school start times for the middle school and the high school. Because we've thought a lot about student health and well-being, and I think if our primary concern is the well-being of students, we really need to pay attention to the many signs of the studies and so that later school start times are associated with less anxiety, improved health, better grades, higher test scores, improved focus and self-regulation among middle and high school students. And I'd love it if we put student health at the center of some policy decisions. ASA and Holliston have already gone to later times, as well as many districts across the state and the country. And I think it's really worth returning to.
Okay. Any other future agenda items?
So now that I reread the public comments from last week, they made a good point about point 4 in the policy we just adopted, so perhaps we need to bring it back. So in BBA, in the school, in number 4, it says public relations, and it says for keeping the local citizenry informed. And the point that was made is that not all residents of Hopkinton are necessarily citizens, and I don't know how that works in terms of the language. Like, is citizenry outside of the idea of being a citizen? I don't know. I need someone who knows a little bit more about wording to...
So I would defer to what Meg probably has some insight on that.
Meg, do you have insight on the technical definition of citizenry?
Just thinking of...
Let me just say this, since we did actually vote the policy, let me just defer this. If the policy working group thinks we need to bring this back, we can always make an amendment to the policy, even though we've adopted it. But thank you for finding that comment. So let's make that a future agenda item.
That's why I was bringing it up now, that it might actually need to be brought back.
So BBA in relation to the word citizenry, to make sure it's inclusive of all residents.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if it is, then we don't need to bring it back.
Yeah, we could bring it back as like an update, just in a liaison type of a way.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I think I need to bring a future agenda item to our next meeting because we had approved some minutes in executive session that I need to share out, just that we approve those to the community, and that will be done at the next meeting. Okay, and now we have items by consensus. Dr. Kavanaugh?
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Nancy.
Second.
Second by Leah. I'll do a roll call vote. Meg?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, and that passes. And now I will seek a motion for adjournment.
It's kind of early for us.
Meg has made a motion for adjournment.
I'll second that.
Second by Nancy. Meg, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Leah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, and we are adjourned at 9:10. Our next meeting is October 29th at 7 p.m. It'll be a regular meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to HCAM as well, and everybody have a good night.